In this video, we're going to start the free worksheet under Infinite Algebra 1 Absolute Value Inequalities on the KutaSoftware website, and I'll leave a link in the description below. Our directions are to solve each inequality and graph its solution. In number 1, we have the absolute value of n divided by 4 is less than or equal to 3. Just as we did with absolute value equations, we're going to need to split this up into two separate equations, or in this case, two separate inequalities. Now, if this was an equation, we would say that n divided by 4 is either equal to 3 or n divided by 4 is equal to a negative 3. However, this is not an equation, it's an inequality. So the absolute value of this n divided by 4 is less than or equal to 3. Let's use the number line below as a representation of the quantity n divided by 4. So in order for something to be less than or equal to 3, the absolute value, here is 3. So we're going to keep going to the left until we hit negative 3. And then we're going to stop. Because if we were to look at the absolute value of negative 4, that's equal to 4, which is not less than or equal to 3. So our two separate inequalities will be that n divided by 4 is less than or equal to 3, and we also have that n divided by 4 has to be greater than or equal to a negative 3, because as soon as we go past that negative 3, we're going to hit negative 4, which the absolute value of that quantity is not less than or equal to 3. But everything between that, 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3, are true for this inequality. So we have that n divided by 4 is less than or equal to 3 as one inequality, and n divided by 4 is greater than or equal to negative 3 as the other inequality. So what we did, we switched which direction the sign went when we made this 3 the negative option. In order to solve for these, we're going to multiply both sides by 4. So we'll get that n is less than or equal to 12. And again, multiply both sides by 4 to get that n is greater than or equal to negative 12. We can write these two inequalities together and say that negative 12 is less than or equal to n, which is less than or equal to a positive 12. And this is the solution to this absolute value inequality. When we graph that, circle and fill in the negative 12, circle, fill in the positive 12, and shade everything in between. Moving on to number 2, we have the absolute value of negative 9v is less than or equal to 54. So our first inequality is going to be that negative 9v is less than or equal to 54. Our second inequality is going to be that negative 9v is greater than or equal to negative 54. Because as soon as we hit negative 55, the absolute value of that negative 55 is a positive 55, which is not less than or equal to 54. So when we're looking at the negative option, we have to do greater than or equal to. Now let's solve for both. We're going to divide by negative 9, and since we're dividing by a negative, we're switching the inequality. So we'll get that v is greater than or equal to a negative 6, and dividing by negative 9 again, we'll get that v is less than or equal to a positive 6. Combining these inequalities, we'll get that negative 6 is less than or equal to v, which is less than or equal to a positive 6. Circle the negative 6, fill it in, circle the positive 6, fill that in, and shade everything in between. Number 3, we have the absolute value of x divided by 6 is greater than or equal to 5. So we know that x divided by 6 is greater than or equal to 5, and x divided by 6 is going to be less than or equal to negative 5. This is a little different from the previous ones because now we have that the quantity with the variable is greater than or equal to some value. But the same rule applies. We're going to have to flip this inequality when we're dealing with the negative options. Think about it this way. -6 is less than or equal to -5, and the absolute value of -6 is equal to 6, which indeed is greater than or equal to 5. So if you're ever confused on which way the inequality sign should face, go ahead and test out some numbers. So now solving for each inequality, we're going to multiply both sides by 6. And on the first inequality, we'll get that x is greater than or equal to 30. And in the second, we'll get that x is less than or equal to -30. And also, unlike the previous, we cannot combine these with the x term in the middle because x is greater than or equal to 30. We're going to circle 30, fill it in, and shade to the right. Or x is less than or equal to -30. So we're going to circle -30, fill that in, and shade to the left. So x is greater than or equal to 30, or x is less than or equal to -30 is the answer for the inequality in number 3. Moving on to number 4, we have the absolute value of -6b is less than or equal to 60. So that -6b is less than or equal to 60, or that -6b is greater than or equal to -60. Divide both sides by -6, we'll get that b is greater than or equal to, since we're flipping the inequality, since we divided by a negative, -10, divide by a -6 again, to get that b is less than or equal to a +10. And in this one, b is between both those terms, so we can rewrite this as -10 is less than or equal to b, which is less than or equal to a +10. Circle, fill in the -10, circle, shade in the +10, and then shade in everything in between. On to number 5. We have the absolute value of -8n is less than 32. So we're saying that -8n, this quantity, is either less than 32 or that -8n is greater than a -32. We're going to divide by -8 to get that n, flipping inequality, is greater than a -4. We're going to divide the other inequality by -8 to get that n is, flipping the inequality, less than a +4. N is in between these two, so again, we can combine them. -4 is less than n, which is less than a +4. So on this one, we're going to circle the -4, but we're not shading it in. We're going to circle the +4, again, not shading it in, but shading everything in between. In number 6, we have the absolute value of x plus 5 is less than 9. So we're saying that this quantity x plus 5 is either less than 9 or that quantity x plus 5 is going to be greater than a -9. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. When we do that for the first inequality, we get that x is less than a +4. When we subtract 5 from the second inequality, we get that x is greater than a -14. So we can rewrite those two as -14 is less than x, which is less than a +4. Circle the -14, but do not fill it in, and circle the +4, and do not fill that in as well. But we're going to shade everything in between, since -14 is less than x, which is less than 4. And we'll stop there for this video. In the next video, we'll do numbers 7 through 14, and then in the third video, we'll finish the worksheet doing numbers 15 through 22. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up on this video, subscribe to my channel, and continue on to the next video to see these practice problems worked out.